And good morning. Happy Saturday, February 4th, 2023. Man, this year is flying already. If you need IT consulting, you need to bounce ideas off somebody, some direction and something, head on over to williehowe.com. Click hire us or subscribe or the contact us, and somebody will be with you as soon as possible. I want to thank everybody for being here. Let me know over in the comments if you can hear me. And you will notice too that my little icon for the stream is different. I had somebody was like, hey, these thumbnails aren't like you, so I'm gonna make sure that we get back. It is interesting to see based on your thumbnail what kind of traffic you get. So let me know if you can hear me over in the comments. Good morning, Doug, Alonzo, Systech, James, Bob, Tony, Joe, Gina, Dave. Video is good. Audio sounds a bit plosive or hissy. It might be because it's got to travel all the way to Canada. But JH says on vacation, but I'm still alive in Synology for the OS and Qnap for the hardware. Yeah, that's what we're gonna talk about. Good morning, CH. So first of all, if you've got questions throughout the live stream, make sure that you are putting those in the comments. Any other creators that are here, make sure you are going to their channels and subscribing as well. So we've got Learn Blue Iris, we've got Tony with Quick Tech, we've got Jeremy, Practical IT with Jeremy. Jeremy's in the house. Jordan, hey, from Canada. Babcock Farms, good morning. All right. So, yeah, so the main meat and potato of today's time that we're going to spend together is going to be talking about Synology versus Qnap. Now, I do have a relationship with both of these companies, and every time I get ready to put out a new Qnap NAS video, they're in the news for something, right? So here is, by the way, if you don't follow Bleeping Computer, this is where a lot of us follow for security news. 4 days ago, over 29,000 Qnap devices vulnerable to code injection attacks. So is it necessarily Qnap's fault? Yes, it is. I mean, it is. But also, people need to make sure that they're patching on time. And Qnap has, they're like Synology. They have millions of devices out there. Now, I'm not saying that Synology doesn't have, security advisories and things like that. But they seem to be much more on top of it than Qnap. And I've let my media contact over there know that that's one of my main concerns. So we'll see if we can go a couple months without Qnap being in the news. I'm probably going to release a few videos because, as JH pointed out in the comments, is that Synology for the software, Qnap for the hardware. So, and what I've got sitting on my desk right now is the DS923 Plus. So thanks to Qnap for sending that over. But this is going to be the mainstay of a lot of the video series that we're working on. So I've got 4 different vendors for 4 turnkey projects that I'm working on. But Synology, the NAS, will be involved in all of them. So I'm pretty excited about that. It's a nice little device. People are saying that it's not good for Plex transcoding, and that doesn't bother me because I don't use it. I'm not going to use it for Plex transcoding, and if you're going to use a device for Plex transcoding, you should probably go ahead and, use a device that's going to be good for Plex transcoding. So let's hop over, because it is, you do have to give Qnap credit where credit is due when you look at the amount of hardware and the different types of hardware that they offer. Now, I'm over on the Synology site, and I've selected all of their different NASs, and they now filter it by like tower servers, rack servers, of course, the iSCSI servers. So you can see they've got their flash stations, and then they've got the high density SAS storage. So you can have up to 300 drive bays. So this thing is a behemoth. Then you've got the SA series, the XS Plus and XS series, which the XS Plus and the Plus series are probably the ones that we deal with the most. And Synology does a really good job of keeping the hardware looks pretty close, throughout the models. I like that. And you can always count on the software to be pretty darn stable. And like I said, they stay on top of it when it comes to security. It'll be interesting to see. We've got a lot of these UC3200s deployed out in the wild, and it'll be interesting to see if they expand this or what they end up doing with this. I don't think it's going to die. They've sold enough of them. They're not going to kill it. Just personally, I know I've consulted on close to 50 of these. So I don't think they're going to kill it, but it'll be interesting to see where it goes in the future. And then they have the surveillance devices that are meant specifically for surveillance, and they do deep video analytics within the hardware here. So I believe these are powered by NVIDIA. And you can see on the DVA 3221, you can have 32 cameras, and you can do 12 deep video analytics tasks. It will scale to 14 drives. And then the DVA 1622, 16 cameras, 2 deep video analytics tasks. I may buy one of these to have here. But, and I had a weird email from a customer the other day saying that people online are telling him not to use expansion bays. And I told him, I said, that's weird because we've got all kinds of expansion bays out there. And we don't have issues with them. People are telling him to replace his NAS and do everything, or replace the drives or whatever. And I don't know that that's necessarily the correct answer. I don't know that it's the wrong answer, but it's something that you have to analyze for each case of that. So we'll end up seeing what he does. But I have customers right now running their entire business, and they have expansion units. And the only time that we've run into issue with expansion units is when somebody accidentally moved a volume from the main device over to the expansion unit, or tried to straddle, and you get all kinds of weird things happening there. So, Synology's hardware, and then of course you can't forget that they have the networking stuff, which we're going to see a video on their new router, and paired with this NAS that I've got. So, but then when you look at Qnap, I mean, just the amount of hardware that Qnap offers, it's staggering, and it's almost overwhelming. So here is their what they call their enterprise. The other thing with the other thing with Qnap is apparently you can run their software in the cloud. So, but boy, you got to make sure that your security stuff is up to snuff if you're going to do that. And yeah, so here's their dual NAS controllers for nearly zero downtime, high availability. Here's their all flash. So they also offer all flash, and you'll notice that they're using ZFS. And that's one big push that Qnap has made, is ZFS. And I have a ZFS model in there, and I'd like to do a video on it. Like I said, let's give it a couple months and see if we have any more security advisories, because literally every time I try to work one of these in, there's a security problem. And it's not necessarily that there's a problem that's crazy, but there's a problem that comes to the surface, that there are a lot of people that probably have that issue, and a lot of issues too. I will give Qnap some kudos on this. A lot of these issues may have been addressed in a firmware, but for some reason, the admins are choosing to not update the firmware. If you have a device, and especially if it's on the internet, exposed to the internet, make sure your software is up to date. Make sure you're using IDS, IPS. Make sure that multi-factor authentication is enabled. Make sure that you're doing country filtering and geo-blocking and all of those things. That'll help. I think somebody in the comments actually said never expose your NAS to the internet. Let me hop back over here to the comments. Let's see here. Yeah, JH says, never expose your NAS to the world firewall with a DMZ isolated VLAN. And that's the thing, is that a lot of people, if you use the DMZ that's built into a lot of these routers, it's not really a DMZ, right? What it does is it just exposes all the ports. It's basically a one-to-one NAT, which is not a DMZ. A DMZ, and I heard too, if somebody let me know, I heard that we're going to be changing the term DMZ because it's a military term and it might be offensive. I heard that we're changing DMZ. CompTIA has changed man-trap to access control vestibule, right? So we're in the middle of this paradigm shift when it comes to lexicon for IT. And there are other people to worry about that. I'll just start using the new terms as they are accepted by the community. But what a DMZ is traditionally going to do is you're going to have a device, or what a DMZ is supposed to do is you're going to have a device in a DMZ. It's going to be a very small network. It could be a single device, but what's going to happen is there are firewall rules that do not allow that device to initiate outbound traffic anywhere. It can only respond to requests, and the firewall rules are going to be set up so that probably only your internal, well, it depends, right? So which DMZ is it, and what is the device for? So a lot of times we'll put email servers in a DMZ, and you need the outside world to talk to it, and you need the inside world to talk to it. But a device like this, you may not have the outside world talking to it. So what the DMZ firewall rules are going to do, regardless of who's trying to get to that device, is it cannot initiate connections out by itself. It can only respond to allowed connections. So your firewall rules are going to be pretty granular as to what can be accessed on a device or devices inside of a real DMZ. And then the firewall rules are only going to allow that outbound traffic back. So I hope that clears up what a DMZ is supposed to be and not what a Linksys DMZ is, where you just expose all the ports to the internet, because that is definitely not the right way to do it. But JH is correct. You could put it in a DMZ. Thank you, Bob, for posting all the creator links. Ron Alcorn said, heard a Qnap was in the mysterious weather balloon. Yeah, for those of you who are not aware, there's apparently a weather balloon floating over the United States. The government's tracking it. I just am not that worried about it. I did not mean to thank Qnap for the DS923. I meant to thank Synology. So, and I do have a 10 gig card for this, and so this will get 10 gig at some point. JH says, I see more vulnerabilities in a lot of light bulbs that will never get an update, or at least Qnap, where at least Qnap and Synology update. Yeah, that's true. And we're getting ready to implement Home Assistant here. And I'm going to do some videos. I'm going to do some videos on Home Assistant. I'll point you to some other resources for like complete setup, because like the hookup, he does a really great job at a lot of this, but I have some very specific use cases for Home Assistant that I'm going to be putting together that I haven't seen any videos on. So that will be coming at some point this year. I can't give you, it is on the 2023 docket. That's all I can tell you. I've got to get it working. I don't have it in the queue like I do all of the Grandstream and Synology and Ubiquity videos. David says, question, is Synology or Qnap better for a first-time NAS user? So here is what I would tell you is if you're looking at what is more user-friendly, I'm going to tell you, in my opinion, that DSM is a much more friendly operating system than the Qnap operating system. The Qnap operating system, like when you look at the edges, everything, this may not make sense the way I'm describing it, but it's like everything has sharp edges. And it can do a lot, but it is, it's the way that it's kind of laid out. It's kind of got like this flat, I don't know, the design, right? The UI teams really differ too. And so in my opinion, the way that everything is laid out, a Synology is going to be a much friendlier beginner piece of hardware. Hope that answers your question, David. Bob says, right tool for the job. In my humble opinion, Synology software more than makes up for its hardware shortcomings. Absolutely. JH says, I like either for off-rack backups. I can't use cloud backup or off-site backup. Yeah, and they both have those free pieces of software that are going to allow us to back up our hardware and our software and do snapshots and all of those things. Let's see here. Tony says, I run a 4-bay rack mount with a 4-bay expansion unit and have for years, and it's great, no issues. And that's what our experience has been. JH says, I feel Qnap is the micro tick of storage and Synology is more like Unify. JH, I feel like that is a very fair comparison. Or you could say that Qnap is the free PBX and Synology is the Grandstream of the unified communications world. That's also another valid comparison. Dave Robertson says, has anyone ever used their Synology as a syslog server? Yes, absolutely. And it makes a great syslog server. Doesn't have the greatest reporting, but you can do alerting. If you need more than that, usually what we do is we switch over to Kiwi syslog server, because the amount of alerting and log watching that you can do a Kiwi syslog server, which is owned by SolarWinds now, but it's still called Kiwi syslog server. I mean, you can go out to physical relays. You can send IP. I mean, it is amazing what you can do with Kiwi syslog server. So you could build your own, instead of going with like a gray log where everything's built, you could actually get Kiwi syslog server, set up a Synology for storage, have all of your logs go to the Synology itself for storage, have Kiwi watching it, do alerting and things based on Kiwi. Kiwi is amazing, and it's very inexpensive. SolarWinds is not paying me for this. I'm telling you from experience that Kiwi syslog server is a fantastic piece of software. David says, I'm hoping to jump on the Synology 1520, 1520, 22 Plus, but want to use it for backups and Plex. So I have Plex installed. I think I'm going to switch over to, Emby on the one that's running it, because I had some problems with Plex. So we'll see what happens. Also, if James is watching, all of you know James, who works with me. Happy birthday to James today. Today is James's birthday. Everybody tell James happy birthday in the comments, please. So Dave, it does work. I hope that answers your question. Sean says, what about putting Synology behind Cloudflare? You could do that. You could put a Synology behind Cloudflare. If you're talking about the WAF, Web Application Firewall, yeah, you could absolutely do that. So let's see. You all are awesome with the comments this morning. Is there still a GPU in a 6-bay? I think so. We'll go back to that here in just a second. Dave Robertson says, got a firewall that craps out every few weeks, and the only way to recover is to reboot. And I'm hoping a syslog from the firewall will help me find out what is going on. Yes, and you'll also, Dave, remember, you'll probably have to change the output on your syslog. You'll probably want to send debug information so you get that, because it might be spitting out in a warning, right? Like if it's a kernel panic or something like that, but you'll probably have to go to debug. And remember, when you're in a debug mode on a lot of this hardware, it's going to use considerable resources to output all of that log information, which is why you've got to be careful. Bob Carpenter says, awesome shirt, by the way. Thank you. I appreciate that. Knowledge is power, right? That's what we're talking about. Alonzo says, my NAS on the internet for remote connections for my sons store their college documents. Absolutely, and you could use Quick Connect to do that. There's been a lot of talk over the last couple of weeks over a lot of channels. Do we use Quick Connect or do we open the ports, right? I'm going to tell you, if you've got MFA enabled and your network and everything is set up securely, go ahead and open the ports because it's going to be faster. The Synology Quick Connect is a proxy that goes in between you and your NAS. So there's a lot of things happening to make that connection. So you'll notice you get slower file transfer that way. If you want faster file transfer, make sure that you're doing a direct connection. Let's see here. Systech says, I just use regular bulbs so I don't have to worry. We are going to start slowly building out our smart apparatuses, but we're not going to do that tie-in with Siri or Alexa just yet. That's why we're going to go with Home Assistant. We're going to keep things on-prem. Unky Joe says Qnap hardware is great, their software is lacking, and their security is less than stellar. That's what we're definitely talking about. Jeremy says, I love my 15, 20, 22 Plus that I got back in the fall. And if you load these up, if you load up the Synologies with memory, you can use them for hypervisors. You can do all kinds of different things. Unky Joe says, can someone recommend asset tracking software that also allows manual inventory entry and that is affordable? We use Landsweeper, and we also use, I did a video on it, and the name is escaping my head if you scroll back, but you can't do manual inventory. Everything is automated. PDQ inventory and PDQ deploy. So, all right, the comments are filling up. This is fantastic. Bob says, how do you recommend to use a Synology expansion device? So typically on an expansion device, I'm going to have things that I'm personally that are not getting a lot of read-write I/O, things that I want to make sure that I've got at my fingertips, that I've got backed up elsewhere. So Dave says, Willie, for Home Assistant, check out Dr. Z. And I think Dr. Z follows me. So we'll definitely check Dr. Z out because I have checked out the Dr. Z channel. And also the hookup does a pretty good job. So let's go back to the hardware and check out this Qnap hardware. Now, I couldn't find it, but they announced somewhere that they have a NAS that is all NVMe, M.2 NVMe. So we're going to have to see, is it on their main page here? It's not that one. That one has it. That's not, i9. See the things that they're doing with the processors and the memory and stuff. And look, here is their new half rack. Everybody's getting into these half rack switches if you haven't noticed. And it's brilliant. It's a brilliant move in my opinion. Yeah, the new QTS is out. But what I was looking for, so here's their enterprise NAS, and you can see all of the different models that they offer. And I believe that Qnap is already at 25 and possibly 100 gig networking. Don't take that for gospel. Oh yeah, no, here it is, right? So here's the Cuts Hero NAS, and they have 5 gig, 10 gig, 25 gig, and 40 gig cards. But somewhere I thought Qnap had a 100 gig device. Here's back to their all flash models, but I couldn't find the NVMe, but I know I saw an article about it. Here's their home NAS, and the one that is really, really interesting to me when you get down here is this, the silent and fanless NAS. And I don't know if this is, I don't think this is the one for NVMe. Let's see. 2.5 gig connectivity. And I think that that's pretty much going to be standard on Qnap now as 2.5 gig. And this home one has two 2.5 gigs, and you can do, they say, up to 5 gigs if you're doing port trunking. Now, remember, don't shoot the messenger. A lot of these companies have marketing teams that I don't control, right? So, and we see this across tech. Like, we can do all these things, but can we really? No, not really, unfortunately. And it's not just them. It's all kinds of vendors do this. And it's got an HDMI out. That's the other thing, is you can hook this NAS directly to your TV for media playback. So here's that 453. So this one has 10 gig. And it is a very nice design. You can see it sitting here on this cabinet. I mean, it just blends right in the living room. Now, that's what Synology was going for with their networking, you know, with the new routers. Let's see. Why products? Networking. I mean, you can tell by the design of the new WRX 560, which I'm going to do a video on. You can tell they were going for that more modern, sleek look, and they had started it back on the MR2200 AC. They had started going there. Much more living room friendly design. But then they really got into it with this WRX 560. But they don't have a NAS that looks like... So if I could take this NAS and run DSM on it... By the way, you can load third-party operating systems on every Qnap NAS because they use non-proprietary hardware. So, and I've got a 2U out here that I worked out a trade for some hard drives that I had, and we're going to load a competing operating system onto the Qnap because the hardware is fantastic. So we're going to see how that works out. But if somebody has the model number, if you saw where they released that, if you saw where Qnap released the NVMe, all NVMe NAS, let me know what that is. Let me see here. Qnap NVMe. Is this it? Yeah. Here we go. Let's see. Yeah, here it is. It's the TBS 464. So it has the storage is totally M.2 M.2 NVMe SSDs. And it's called the NAS book. So it's got two 2.5 gig ports, USB 3. This thing has the potential. I mean, could you imagine if Synology had hardware like this? Where can we buy this? Can we buy this? Ooh, online store. Let's see how much that unit is. That's the TBS 464. Can we just search for this? TBS. Let's see. TBS. I'm not seeing. TBS 4. Let's search for it. TBS 464 right here. So it looks like it's $599. But the hardware, I mean, I think it's fantastic that they are already at a place where they're doing NVMe. I mean, can you imagine how fast this thing is going to be? 2 HDMI outs. You can't deny that they're knocking it out of the park with the hardware. You can't deny that. All right, so back over to the comments. Woo, you all are going crazy. I love it. Let's see. Pedro says, happy birthday, James. Just don't forget that the new Synology NAS doesn't have integrated graphics. Right, none of them do except for the NAS. So let's see here. JH says, I did some firewall filtering on an IoT heavy house and found the stove mining BTC when the oven was on. That is insane that while your stove is on, it's mining Bitcoin. Tony Garcia says, snipe IT is what we do. Unky Joe, I think this is headed towards you to answer your question. manual entry, imports, and asset tag printing with QR codes, few hundred a year. So check that out. JH says the oven wouldn't work without internet, which is insane. Anytime you can't own a device and fully use all of its features, we're heading to a very dangerous place. Just like with cars where you've got to pay for your heated seats that are in it, which is kind of ridiculous. Anyway, Tony says the new DS923 Plus allows NVMe drives to be used as a volume, not just for cache like on the earlier models. Yep, we are going to explore all of that. So the drives that I'm going to use, my main drives, are going to be, and if you were watching, if you follow me on the other socials, you'll see that I'm getting ready to do a video on this. This video will come out because I'm going to explain how this is going to be the mainstay of the NAS throughout all of our videos this year. But I'm going to use the Synology SSDs. I'm going to pull the Synology M.2s out of one of my other devices. We're going to throw those in. And we're going to have one device to rule them all for 2023 as far as videos go. So Learn Blue Iris, Joe over at Learn Blue Iris asks, what do you recommend for offsite backup for a NAS? If you're on Synology, either another Synology and then to C2, or you could go directly to C2. Bob Carpenter says they announced 100 gig back in 2021 in a press release. That may have been where I saw it, Bob. And let's see. Bob says they recommend it for the TSH 2490 FU all flash device. That must be the 100 gig. And JH is correct. Bonded connection isn't double the speed. It's more like 1.5 speed with redundancy. Absolutely. Pedro says the one I'm looking for is the TS410E. So there must be another device that I didn't get to on that. Technicom Media says if only Synology would not restrict the use of other NVMe drives to be used as storage, right? Jack Squat says, so is season 1 of Duck Dynasty cosplay complete? So you must be talking about my beard. And so bought a new beard trimmer. And I didn't screw up the beard so much as I brought my mustache down and around my mouth. And I got it too short. So then I had to even out the rest. So I'm getting there, figuring out how to trim my own facial hair like an adult. Kind of cool. So, all right, I want to thank you all for being here this morning. I've got to get rolling. I think Unky Joe will probably have a stream. You can check that out. Go check out everybody's channels. Bob Carpenter, let me know how much I owe you for shipping from Canada. And I really do want to thank you all for being here. Without all of you, this doesn't exist. So have a great weekend. Be awesome.